Hi, I'm Jade from the blog Stuff Jade Made, and today I'm going to show you how to turn this into this. So today we're going to be taking the Maverick Rev 6 and turning it into this. I'm going to be modifying some internal workings so that the drop goes from a short drop to a full long drop like this. The slide still slides, and the trigger action still works. So to get it started, we're going to pull this thing open. You'll rotate it around. Took out several screws back here, and all of those need to come out, but you have to save all of them. I'm going to have a tin here off to the side where all of those parts are going to go. All of the parts inside here you'll want to hold on to, unless otherwise noted. So we'll pull this out one at a time. Keep all parts. Even this little guy is necessary. Alright. So these are the two halves. Set that aside. And now you will see there's another screw here that needs to come out. Alright, great. And I think that's everything. Mine came right apart. I've seen some videos where it takes a lot more love. And so there we go. There's one side of the casing, and here's the side that actually contains all of the various parts. Okay, so here's a brief rundown of how this works so you know what you do and don't need depending on your needs. So when the slide is attached, it goes in here, and this will be hooked on. This little spring right here is necessary to make the slide return back into place. So for right now, we're not going to worry about that, but that will be important for later assembly if you want the slide to come back into position. Whenever you use the slide, that pin pulls back on this cylinder. This remains in place, and it pulls this to create compression in the spring, which creates a space of air inside the tube that when it's released will suddenly push through out this nozzle on the tube. But for our purposes, or at least for my purposes, I don't really care about projectiles because I'm going to be completely modifying this so it doesn't actually project anything. All I want is for this to be able to rotate, for me to be able to pull the cock, to be able to cock the gun, and for it to return back to position. So I can pull this part out as well as the spring. Normally what happens is once this is pulled back, part of this, this part here locks into this little ring here. And once you pull back on the trigger, it bumps that little ring into dropping, which releases that chamber. So this is gone. This you can pull or leave as you desire. You can remove it, and it will allow you some extra space in here. You can remove it if you can. To create some extra space in here, for instance, if you wanted to be able to shove a battery pack in here or something else, depending on, again, your needs. But so, that's not relevant for the function of this device because the main function that I need in rotation happens right down here in this area. So, once all that's out of the way, we'll be able to further mod this. Now, taking out this chamber involves retracting this little ring here and pulling this out. So there are two ways to create the drop effect that I'm looking for. Whenever you are dropping it, you push this button and it drops ever so slightly out. What you can see when you pull this apart is that there is a little ledge right here and a little ledge right here, and those two hit each other, and that's your first stop that happens on this side of the gun. That's the primary stop. The other one's a little more flexible, but so there's that side, and then over here there's this little bit that basically just hooks on over here. And so there are two places that need to be modified to create the drop barrel. This needs to come off, and either this needs to come off or this needs to come off. Those are the basic things that need to happen in order for that drop barrel to happen. Alright, so let's get started on that. In order to make this a little easier to work with, I'm going to pull this apart. So also make things easier later on, as I'll be modifying a lot of this part. So using a screwdriver and a good bit of pressure. Not quite yet. There we go. Pull that apart and don't lose that bit. Okay, so there will come off a little round thing and a little spring. Set those aside. Alright, very good. So I've got this piece. I'm going to very carefully work on getting that out. That's pretty good, I'd say. So that's that part. Now you can work on getting that off, or you can just get the stop off here. And from what I can tell, this is probably the simpler option. Likewise, we'll just have to work at it a little bit. Looks pretty good. You can also go in and sand any of these bits, depending on how smooth you want everything, but I think that is going to be pretty functional. We now have a drop barrel, fully functional drop barrel. So let's set that aside and start pulling this apart. To start with, in the end here, we've got 3 screws. So I will begin there. Come right out. Fantastic. Now all of this is going to have to just come out, and so that comes out by this end, which also has 1, 2, 3 screws. Alright, well that took some doing, but we got all the screws out of here and set them aside, so all those are out, and we just pull this apart, and there are a lot of pieces. Now, if you were just doing a mod where you were trying to still retain the darts and be able to shoot them further and so forth, a lot of people will pull these out. They're considered air restrictors and the springs and so forth. For my mod, you don't need any of this, so it can actually be put aside to be gotten rid of. All of this can. Alright, so here's what I have discovered in actually being able to poke around with these. The ends of these come fully flush, and then these can fully flush with that whenever it's regularly assembled. It needs to not exceed this length when it is fully reassembled after my mods, otherwise it will not fit into the given space. So what I know from that is that is my full working length, because that comes fully flush with this. It's made so that when the dart is in here, this will be completely air sealed so that the air will push the darts out. So this meets, that is my full working width. That fits just so. It is exactly 3 inches from there. So what I'm going to need to do for my mod is to slice these off. I would like to leave this in place so that this is completely uninhibited and the barrel will be able to rotate fully. So each of these will need to come off at level with this edge. On this, all of the tubes need to come off and be cut in a rounded manner right through here. Each of these supports can come out as well, but I need to try and keep this as intact as possible. On this, I'll be able to go in and cut these out using my Dremel. And ideally, I would allow the supports in between right through here to remain solid and cut out these curved areas through here. all the way down into this little grooved area, so that once it's fully assembled, these will be allowed to go flush with the bottoms of these. It will come up through the channel, and these supports on either side will lie against it, but it won't be restricted by this. I'll be able to file that down ever so slightly to be able to go flush against this. And then this end should be able to go into this curvature here. So I'll go get cutting, and I will get back to you shortly. Well, unfortunately my video cut off, and I don't know that I'll be able to recover some of the work that I did in here, but essentially boiled down to, I did all my pieces, cut them as I described, but decided to pull out every other support. I decided to leave the ones that were going to connect up here. I've put it all together in an attempt. I haven't actually put on the cap to solidify any of my plans, but I think this is probably a little bit more what I'm going to go for. The bottles will not fit as I had hoped, but I do think I'm going to be able to do some cool things with some coiled wire, make it look a little bit more generator-like, something a little bit more exciting. It'll be every other bottle instead of 6, and I've decided to put them in at a slight angle so that I create this slight spinning effect as the rotation happens, but we'll get on with some of those further details later. At this point, I can pull this back apart to begin working on it again. Essentially, I've shaved down a little bit of this, and right through here I plan on drilling a small hole here on each of these little stands in order to use some wire to hold things in place the way that I want to. I also plan on using a little bit of some tubing, possibly painted copper, to run from here into the hole there. The wire will run from here and around, and then I'll also have some going in some other places in hopefully some exciting ways. But from here on out, there's going to be some additional sanding and things I'm going to do just for smooth operation. Everything looks like it's going together just fine, and I do believe the next stage, after I've gotten some of that a little bit smoothed out, is going to be painting. So before any actual painting can occur, there are 3 things that need to happen. First, we need to alter any surfaces that will show up through the paint. So for instance, the Nerf logo is slightly raised, and if painted you'll still be able to see the shape of it, as well as over here, Maverick, the cautions on this side, and so forth. Anything that you don't want to show through needs to come off. So what I've actually found does work reasonably well is to take a good blade and just scrape at it nice and slow. Until it smooths out. And you'll see obviously the paint is coming off with this, but gradually that wears down until it's smooth enough that it won't show through the paint. You can also use sandpaper, and it'll achieve a similar effect, though you want to use a fine grit to smooth things out so that you don't have rough lines in it. Second thing that needs to happen is anything you do want to show through the paint needs to happen now. So for instance, when I was cutting up my other pieces, I went ahead and allowed my Dremel to kind of bump into some things a little roughly. I was allowing a few places that I might have otherwise tried to smooth out a little more, get a little bit dinged and roughed up. A couple scratches here and there. That's going to give it a slightly more battle-worn look, which is something that I want for my piece. If you want it to look prim and polished, like a nice military piece that's been kept for ceremonies and good service, this is not what you'll want to do. You'll want to make sure that everything is smooth and fine and very crisply done. But you can batter it with a Dremel, you can batter it with some sandpaper. You can just take a good solid knife and score it periodically. And so now I'm going to have some scars here that'll show through the paint and other treatments that I'll do to it. So that's another thing to do, along with if you want to add on rivet textures or anything like that. Now's a good time to do it. I've seen some people will use the tip of their hot glue gun without any glue in it and press it into the plastic to slightly melt it and create small rings that look like rivets. I've also seen some modders will use I believe it may actually be called some sort of liquid nail or something like that, where it's this liquid paint, or they'll use puff paint to create small dots and rivets, design lines, etc. on it. So that's another way to add texture through it. And the third thing that will need to happen, which is after all of that is said and done, everything that is going to be painted needs to be washed well and wiped down with rubbing alcohol and a soft cloth. That's to get any grease, residue, oils, anything from your hands or working surfaces off of it so that the paint will stick as best as possible. So I'm going to get going with all that, and then I'll come back after I've gotten everything painted. Alright, well, I got my paint work done. As you can see, I've added some things to the surface. Then we'll get the metallic treatment here in just a moment. I glued these down before I put down my first coat of paint because I wanted those to bond directly to the plastic. That's just a little bit of extra durability that if I had done it onto the paint, then it was subject to the strength of the paint rather than the strength of the glue to hold things on. These are just little faux cogs and wheels from the woodpile collection at Hobby Lobby. These are thin enough wood pieces that they can actually just be trimmed down with scissors, and I made them fit this curvature on both sides so that it'll have the look of that these are sticking out from this curvature here and attached some sort of internal mechanism inside the machine. I plan on trimming that up with a little bit of wire to give it a little bit more of a authentic kick. But the treatment I'm talking about to give it the metallic look is going to be a fairly standard trick in the mod world here. These are rub and buff. They're metallic finishes. I got these at Hobby Lobby. I have silver leaf, antique gold, and Spanish copper. All of these are just a metallic wax paste, a finish. They actually do serve to protect it a little bit. Most people will just do this, not worry about any kind of sealant layer. But if you choose to, you can of course add a sealant layer on top of this, but I will probably just be going with these. I chose 3 colors so that I'll be able to add contrast between areas. I can use it to highlight certain places more than others. I think it'll have a really nice finish. But this is just a little tube of paste. Pull it out. The cap has a little point on it. And I'll pull that out and use it to pierce this. And so you can already see there's that little bit of silver on there. And oh, gently squeeze it out. So it looks like this may have separated a little bit, which they tell you if that happens, if that happens, you can just take a moment to knead the tube to help kind of mix a little bit. There's probably not a whole lot of wiggle room in my tube right now, but I will probably give it a shake or something to kind of mix that in. But this has a distinct odor. It's obviously got a definite vapor that you don't want to breathe in. So work in a well-ventilated area. In fact, I'm going to take a moment to turn on my fan. Alright, now you can use this just with your fingers. You can use it with a paintbrush. You can use it with a cloth. There are any number of ways to apply this. The silver I am going to apply to this back area on both sides of the gun. I'm probably going to apply some of it to the hilt. and I'll probably do it on the trigger on the other half. I'll probably pick and choose some other places. I have it in my head that the main body is going to be copper and the moving pieces are going to be brass, so gold, and then the silver leaf is going to be used to add contrast in places where I think it's going to need it most. I think I'm going to work a little bit with a paintbrush here. These have to be cleaned very thoroughly, or in this case I'm going to use something that's a little bit more disposable. It's a good idea to have a napkin on hand in case you have any problems. And the reason that Rub and Buff is nice is you can add on a lot of it or a little bit depending on your needs. And if you wind up with streaks, like you can see I'm adding streaks here using the paintbrush, that actually just adds a little bit of a brushed metal finish that can add to your piece. And things like the scratches that I left in the finish are going to stand out as long as I don't shove. If I don't shove the paintbrush in, it should be alright. Like I said, I want this to have a little bit of a battle-worn look, and so I'm going to be easy on places where I've put scratches and dents. And although there are definitely areas of this that are going to be covered by the slide, I'm just going to hit the whole area to make sure that it has all of that finish, that look, and it'll serve to protect the surface a little bit from the movement of the slide. Okay, so at this point I'm pretty much just going to continue in that vein, adding color in the form of my silver, gold, and copper until I am satisfied with the look, and when I move on to the next step, we'll pick right up again. Well, while I'm waiting for some of my other pieces to dry, I'm going to work on some of the decorative bits that are going to go into the barrel. I am using a 18 gauge wire. And this comes from just a bit of electrical wire that we had lying around that I have stripped all for a little bit on the end that will make things easier. In just a moment you'll understand why. I have a simple pair of wire cutters that we're going to use, and then I'm just going to use the barrel of the post from the inside of the barrel, and I'll begin wrapping this. And what I want to achieve here is a tight coil. Just a couple more turns and we'll call it a day. Clip off the excess, and then I just want to get this slid off, which is because of the friction bit on the end. Makes it a little bit difficult, but you can untwist it gently to give yourself a little bit more wiggle room. Okay, once you've got that made, thread through this wire. This is why we kept that little bit on. Now, I'm going to give it a little stretch. I want it to be about 3 inches. Go. So I'll make several of these. I'm going to do at least 3, one for each section of the barrel. I might do 6 so that I have one running on either side of each little bottle. But I'm going to see an experiment. I want to see how it looks with just the 3, and then if I decide it needs a little something extra, I'll go ahead and make some more. Alright, well, I've got my pieces pretty well painted. I have a few things that I want to touch up today, but I wanted to show you one important aspect of the Rub and Buff product. It is called Rub and Buff because you rub it on and then you buff it up after it has dried. And so as I'm rotating this, you can probably tell that there's an area from here up that is actually nicely pretty shiny, and then the rest looks rather dull. This side I have just taken, I have a little piece of fleece cloth. It's just a scrap from something else that I have rubbed in order to buff that up, and it has created a pretty nice shine. And so I'm going to do some more of this piece just so you can see this important aspect of making this look nicely metallic. And so you can see it doesn't even take that much effort to really change the surface. And so that shine makes it just that little bit more real, a little bit more metallic. And so I would recommend that you definitely take the time to go ahead and take that last little step in finishing off your products. Alright, well, now we're about to get started on the part that I am pretty much the most excited about in this process, which is making this barrel much more interesting. I took the bottles that I planned on using and I filled them with water and a little bit of food coloring. I made sure that they each contain the same amount so they'll look nice and even throughout the whole process. When they're spinning and everything else, I think it'll look really interesting. I have sealed the corks in with some E6000, which is just a pretty standard, sort of flexible, clear adhesive. It's going to work really well for this, I think. If you use this, however, make sure that after you've put the glue in that you don't let the liquid touch the glue. It can track down on the inside of your bottle. I didn't realize that had happened until too late, but I think that in the mix of everything else, if I turn that to the back, that's really not going to be much of an issue. But just be aware that that could be a problem, so be careful with it. I have kind of done a little bit of testing of an idea. I took some of my copper wire that I stripped and wrapped it around the collar of the bottle, and I'm going to do that on all 3 of these. And so I am wrapping them, hopefully, so that they will be pretty solidly in there. And I don't want anything sticking out too badly. Give it a good solid couple twists. Now that that's around and this is set, I'm going to pull that off in just a moment using the same stripper that I used to strip the other one, or rather strip the rest of the wire. I'm crossing it over a couple different directions in hopes that everything will kind of lock down and be really nice and sturdy for the long run. Well, that came off easier than I anticipated, actually. that's that. They're ready to go in. I had planned on setting these up like so. Wrapping the wire. What I'm going to do is put some of that E6000 on the backs of these. I can get a paintbrush in there, I think. Okay, now that I'm waiting for that to set, I want to prepare these guys a little bit more. I plan on having them run through the barrel and into the ends of where the Nerf bullets would have come out from before. And so what I plan on doing is using these little gears from the little wood pile set to use to fasten these into the ends of those, and that'll also shield the ends from view so that they're a little less gaping hole and actually have a feature to them. So what I'm planning on doing is threading these through here and then gluing these down. Trim that up a little bit more. Gluing them down using hot glue because I want them to set pretty quickly. Then once they've set a little bit, I'll strip off this excess bit here and wrap the wire back around the sides of the gear, and so that'll make a little bit more sense here in a moment, but I think that'll provide some interest to it as well. So this time I'm using hot glue because I want a quick set. You won't be able to see anything in the end. Don't stick yourself to your project. That would be preferable. I did a test one and I think I like how that turned out. It's going to be really very secure on there. I've already stripped the plastic off the rest of this. I'm basically just fanning this set of wires out until it goes around fairly evenly. And pulling it down around the head of that gear. Just taking a minute to spin it and press those wires up around the head again. And this will all be completely invisible, but I think it'll just be a little thing that I know about. You know about it. Maybe adds a little detail. This has had long enough to set that it's not worrying me to pick it up and handle it. Well, then I'll just have to thread these through, again using crochet hook. I want these to come through slightly sideways to the bottles. Alongside. There we go. Going to happen is I'm going to glue that in place, so that'll close that hole up a little bit. It should be quite secure. And that'll run straight up here into that position. So let me heat up my glue gun again. love it, I love it. I think that'll have a really nice effect when it's rotating in the barrel. Okay, so last thing that I want to do here, before I add those extra gears into the ends of the other barrels, these guys here, I have the post that comes through, and I would like to have it wrapped in copper as well. But wrapping that while it's in there is practically impossible, and I found that this post, if you're wanting to do something like this, this post is the same size as a size 2 knitting needle, US size 2 knitting needle. And so I'm just going to take my knitting needle and do what I had done earlier to do the coil springs. This to press that point in, everything nice and smooth. Okay. Excellent. I like that a lot better. All right, now I can actually start reassembling here. Let's line up those screw holes. Alright, and so now the post here gets its spring. This little guy again. Basically, you can use a hammer or the end of a screwdriver. Just ram that guy in. There we go. Beautiful. Oh, go me. And I just realized that I failed to paint this. Yay! So, I'll have to find a moment to do that, to paint the end of this. But yeah, that barrel part is all ready to go. I have some detail pieces that I'd like to get on here. Before I painted any of this, just to prevent any risk of scratching it, I cut some wire and curved it to fit against here. And I basically just used the inside curve of a paint roll and just pressed the wire into the curve of the roll, which created that nice smooth curve through there. And I am going to glue this down into position. And try not to bend anything in the process. So did that for the other side. The only difference being that instead of allowing it to go to the inside curve as I did on the other side, I made the wire follow along this line here to the outside, because with it being the drop barrel, it drops to this side, and if I put anything in here, it'll interrupt that. Up here, it should not interrupt anything. I similarly want to add these little filigree pieces to my slide. That'll further help cover up the little bit of Nerf that still shows through here. But then also it'll add to the slightly Victorian look. I don't want to use too much of this. Unfortunately, I did not keep the bag that these came in, so I don't know the brand information to tell you. But these also were picked up at my Hobby Lobby. It was a set of 4. First I only thought there were 2 in, but I didn't look closely at the label, and I lucked out. There are 4, so I plan on using parts of this for another part of the gun. Getting off some of the excess here. Basically, this area up here still has a little bit of the logo on it, but it also looked a little blank, so I'm planning on cutting part of this to fit in. So I'm using a good sturdy pair of scissors, and I do believe that I just want to get right up to the tip of this little central diamond and then cut off everything surrounding it. So hopefully that'll go smoothly. Could probably also use some wire cutters. That actually did very well. Bend that out of the way. Okay, it is fairly fragile once you've snipped part of it off. That just tells you that you need to be careful with the rest of it. Oh yes, I like that a lot. Okay, here we go. I do have to watch out that I don't block that screw hole. Or could wait till the whole thing is assembled. Alright, now the part that we've all been waiting for, reassembly. So, I'm going to start with the last part that we took out, which is the barrel. Everything should go back pretty smoothly. Should go back pretty smoothly, as long as your posts go into the right positions. Oh, we're getting a piece. That will not do. There we go. Okay, it just takes a little bit of pressure. But this goes into place, everything else seems to be pretty happy with where it is. Okay, take the other plate, come in over it. Press everything together evenly all the way around. Make sure all the seams are lining up the way you need to. Start dropping in screws. Alright, once you've got all these main screws in, don't forget that little tricky one here, it's time to add the slide back in. So make sure that you haven't lost the pin here, it's very important, and this little guy right here, also very important. What you'll want to do is slide that in, make sure in this case that you're not on top of anything over here. And if you will use a very, very small screwdriver, such as a glasses screwdriver, that's what I have found to be the most effective through here at catching this little tiny loop. There we go. and get that up and over your post. That way it'll retract as needed. Try not to lose it again. Alright. Carefully lay everything back in place, making sure that you catch the post in the little in this well here. Let me set that back in. Okay. Clamp everything down really well. Your screws back in place. There'll be 3. 1, 2, 3. Excellent. Okay. All right. And now you have your completed, modified Nerf Maverick. And as you can see, that still rotates the way I wanted it to. The slide still snaps in place. And the action works great. Now let's test and make sure the drop comes out properly. It's a little on the stiff side. Make sure that it's not. There we go. It's just a little stuck. Beautiful. It turns excellently. Snaps right back into place. I am very pleased with how this turned out. I hope you enjoyed the video. And I would love to see if you use this tutorial to make your own mods and do something really cool. I would love to see pictures. Share them in the comments below, or you can follow on my blog through the links below in the description. Link me up, share things with me. I would love to see your work. I hope you enjoyed. I hope it was informative for you, and I guess I'll see you next time.